"Your house has already been rented," my son said. "This is where you live now." My suitcase sat beside my cane in the lobby of a memory care facility. Less than an hour earlier, I had left rehab believing Mark was taking me home. He stood at the admissions desk with one hand on the paperwork, speaking about me as if I weren't in the room. When I said I had never agreed to stay there, he gave the manager a patient smile. "Dad's confused. The stroke changed things." I looked at the woman holding the file. I didn't argue with my son. I didn't reach for the papers. "Before you admit me," I said, "please read the conditions on the page." He skipped. Her eyes moved down the document. Then she stopped. Mark's hand came off the counter. 3 weeks earlier, I still believed the worst thing I had lost was strength in my left leg. It happened on a gray Saturday morning in late October. I had just carried a cup of coffee into the small room Eleanor once used as her library. 6 years after her death, I still called it hers. Her handwriting remained on the little white labels beneath the shelves. One of her cardigans still hung over the back of the reading chair. I reached for a book and missed it, not by much. An inch, perhaps. Then the coffee slipped from my hand, the cup struck the hardwood floor and rolled beneath the desk. I stared at the spreading stain, annoyed at first. When I tried to bend, my left leg did not follow the instruction. I caught the edge of the desk. "Not today," I muttered, as if my body had merely chosen an inconvenient time to misbehave. My left hand felt heavy. When I tried to say my address aloud, the first attempt came out thick. The second was clearer. That was enough to frighten me. I reached the phone and called for help. I gave my name, my address, and the location of the spare key. I answered every question. Partly because it mattered. Partly because answering proved something to me. By the time the paramedics arrived, I could speak normally again. My leg still felt as though it belonged to someone else. One of them asked whether I had family nearby. "My son," I said. "Mark Bennett." I gave them his number. As they moved me toward the front door, I looked back at Eleanor's library. Coffee had reached the leg of the reading chair. The cup lay on its side under the desk. It struck me then that I might not be home that evening. I told myself that was the worst possibility. At the hospital, Mark arrived before they finished the first round of tests. His work jacket was half-zipped, and sawdust clung to one sleeve. He looked genuinely frightened. "Dad, I'm all right. You had a stroke, a small one, according to the doctor. That is not the same thing as being all right." He took my phone and wallet from the plastic tray beside the bed. "I'll hold these," he said. "You don't need to worry about anything." At the time, it sounded like the kindest sentence a son could offer his father. I did not yet understand how much could be hidden inside the word anything. The neurologist called it a mild ischemic stroke. The word mild did a great deal of work. It meant I could understand the diagnosis, recognize everyone in the room, and complain about the hospital coffee. It did not mean I could stand without someone watching me. Mark remained near the foot of the bed while the doctor explained the next steps. "You'll likely benefit from inpatient rehabilitation," she said. "Your speech has recovered well. The weakness should improve, but we need to assess your balance and mobility." "I understand." Mark leaned forward. "How long before he can live alone?" The doctor looked at me. "That depends on Mr. Bennett's progress and the support available at home." "I have a bedroom downstairs," I said. "A bathroom nearby. I can arrange help." Mark's jaw tightened. "You haven't seen the steps from the garage. I installed the handrail myself. 20 years ago." The doctor moved on before the conversation became an argument. Later that afternoon, Denise arrived with a clean sweater and the expression of someone who had spent the drive preparing herself to more calm. She kissed my cheek. "You scared us. That wasn't my intention. Lily wanted to come, but Mark thought the hospital might be too much today. I'd like to speak with her, of course, when you're rested." Mark had my phone in his jacket pocket. I noticed, but I did not ask for it back. I was tired. There was a strange comfort in letting someone else handle the ordinary things. I let him keep it. The following morning, a nurse brought a clipboard of forms. Mark sat beside me while she reviewed emergency contacts and advanced planning documents. "I have a folder at home," I said. "Healthcare instructions, paperwork naming Mark as my advocate, and separate financial documents." Mark nodded. "I have a copy. I want the full packet scanned into the hospital record." The nurse wrote a note. Mark touched my arm. "Dad, they don't need every page right now. They may never need every page." That is why the documents were prepared in advance. The nurse smiled faintly. We can scan the complete packet. Especially the conditions, I said. Not just the signature pages. Mark looked toward the window. He had been present when I signed the documents after Eleanor died. He knew his name appeared in them. He also knew I had never liked authority without limits. Whether he remembered those limits clearly, I could not tell. By the end of the day, I had been transferred to Mercy Ridge Rehab. Mark followed the transport vehicle and carried my small bag into the room. He placed my wallet, house keys, and phone inside the top drawer beside the bed. I'll keep track of these, he said. You focus on getting stronger. The request sounded reasonable. I could not walk to my own front door, much less manage the mail, the bills, or the repairs. Mark said we're waiting at the house. All right, I said. For a few days, a woman in a dark blue cardigan entered carrying a tablet. I'm Nora Ellis, she said. I help with discharge planning. Discharge sounds ambitious. It's useful to be ambitious early. She pulled a chair close enough that I would not have to raise my voice. Then she asked me, not Mark, where I intended to live when I left Mercy Ridge. Home, I said. Mark answered at the same time. We'll have to see. Nora looked from my son to me. It was the first time I noticed how quickly he had begun using the word we. Rehabilitation reduced life to measurable victories. On Monday, I stood for 20 seconds without gripping the rail. On Tuesday, I made it halfway down the practice hallway. By Thursday, I could reach the therapy room with a cane and one person walking beside me. I had spent most of my adult life in schools. There, progress often hid behind bad attitudes, unfinished homework, and angry parents. At Mercy Ridge, progress was easier to see. The distance between two strips of tape on the floor could become the most important thing in the world. Mark came almost every afternoon. He brought clean clothes, spoke with the nurses, and kept a running list of things he said needed attention. The gutters are full. I had them cleaned in September. The furnace should be checked. It was serviced last month. The mail is piling up. Then bring it to me. He gave me the smile he used when he believed I was being unnecessarily difficult. There's nothing you need to deal with from here. I glanced toward the bedside drawer. My phone would be useful. You have the room phone. My contacts are not in the room phone. You're supposed to rest. I've been resting between scheduled exercises designed to make me exhausted. He laughed, but he did not hand me the phone. For the first few days, I let him take control. Lists and quick decisions had always made Mark feel useful. As a boy, he organized his tools by size. As an adult, he built a company around schedules, crews, and problems that could be solved with enough planning. I told myself this was how he handled fear. One afternoon, my phone rang from inside his jacket while he stood near the window. He checked the screen and stepped into the hallway. Through the narrow glass panel beside the door, I watched him speak briefly. His expression shifted from irritation to concentration. When he returned, I held out my hand. Who called? Nothing important. It was important enough to leave the room. Work. Then why was someone from work calling my phone? He paused for half a second. They couldn't reach me. One of the guys had your number from years ago. It was possible. I had introduced Mark to several contractors when he started the company. He changed the subject before I could ask which one. Denise picked up your mail. Mostly statements and advertisements. I'd still like to see it. I'll bring it tomorrow. He did not. That evening, I asked a nurse to help me use the room phone. I called Lily. The call went to voicemail. Hello, sweetheart. It's Grandpa. I'm improving at a highly impressive rate, though the people here remain unreasonable about letting me walk without supervision. Call when you can. I hung up before saying that I missed her. The next day, Mark told me she had a school project. She doesn't want to bother you. She has never worried about bothering me before. She's 15. Things change. The comment landed harder than it should have. That afternoon, Nora joined us during a discussion about my therapy goals. She asked, Mr. Bennett, how comfortable are you managing medication on your own? Dad's never been good at keeping track of pills, Mark said. I turned toward him. I take one prescription in the morning. You forgot it twice last month. I skipped it before blood work, on my doctor's instructions. Nora waited until Mark finished. Then she turned her chair so she faced me directly. Mr. Bennett, how comfortable are you managing your medication? Before I could answer, Mark drew a breath to speak again. For the first time, I wondered whether helping me had stopped being enough for him. I'm comfortable managing it, I told Nora. I use a weekly organizer. The prescription is taken with breakfast, unless my physician instructs otherwise. Nora entered something on her tablet. Mark crossed one ankle over the other. The medication isn't the main issue. What is? The house? The stairs. You being alone. There's a bedroom and full bathroom on the first floor, and the laundry is downstairs. Laundry can be moved. You say that as if moving appliances is the same as being able to live safely. His tone was controlled, concerned, even. Anyone passing the open door might have heard a responsible son confronting a stubborn father. That was part of what made it difficult to object. Nora asked about meals and therapy. Then she asked how I would bathe safely and handle an emergency. I answered each question. I did not pretend I could resume my old routine immediately. I'll need a shower chair, I said. Someone can help with groceries for the first few weeks. I'm willing to have physical therapy at home or attend outpatient sessions. I won't drive until I'm cleared. Mark leaned forward, and when Dad can't make those calls himself, the room went quiet. I looked at him carefully. When I cannot make them, we can discuss who should. At present, I am sitting 3 feet away. I didn't mean. You answered a question about my medication, then my home, now my decisions. I'm trying to keep you safe, and I am trying to participate in my own life. Nora placed the tablet on her knee. Mr. Bennett has been consistent in his answers, she said. He understands the risks and the support he would need. Mark looked at her. You've known him for 4 days. I'm not evaluating his personality. I'm documenting his understanding. His mouth tightened. I knew that expression. Mark had worn it at 16 when a teacher refused to change a grade. He wore it again at 32 when a supplier declined to extend credit. It did not mean he had given up. It meant he was rearranging the problem. After Nora left, he stood by the window with his hands in his pockets. You made me sound controlling. I described what happened. In front of a social worker. She was already present. You know what I mean. I did. Mark had always hated being corrected in front of other people. When he was young, Eleanor would wait until we were home. I had often done the same, even when waiting allowed the behavior to settle into something harder to change. I considered telling him that speaking for me had to stop. Instead, I said, I know you're worried. His shoulders lowered. Of course I'm worried. I appreciate what you're doing. The relief on his face came too quickly. I just need you to trust me, he said. I almost answered that trust was not the same thing as permission, but the words stayed where they had stayed for years, behind my teeth, preserving a peace that was becoming less peaceful by the day. Mark picked up my house keys from the bedside table. I'm going over there tonight, he said. I'll start getting the downstairs room ready. What needs to be done? A few things, such as... He slipped the keys into his pocket. Let me handle it. Then he walked out with the same calm confidence he had used when answering Nora's questions. Only after the door closed did I realize he had never asked whether I wanted him to enter the house that evening. The therapy staircase had 4 steps. By the middle of my second week, I could climb all 4 with the rail in my right hand and my cane in the left. It took longer than I liked, but speed was not the goal. Control first, the therapist reminded me. It was good advice in more than one setting. Mark arrived near the end of the session. He watched me descend and did not look reassured. You're putting too much weight on the rail. That is why the rail exists. At home you'll have turns, thresholds, the garage step. I'm aware of the architecture. You don't have to turn everything into a debate. I thought we were discussing my house. He waited until we were back in my room before continuing. It's a lot of house for one person. It has been a lot of house for one person for 6 years. That doesn't mean it still makes sense. I studied him. What exactly are you proposing? I'm saying we should look at the situation realistically. The situation being my recovery, the house, the upkeep, the value sitting there. The phrase changed the temperature of the room. Eleanor and I had bought the Maple Ridge house 31 years earlier. We raised Mark there. We rebuilt the back porch after a winter storm. Lily left a small handprint in the wet concrete when she was 6. Mark had once called it home. Now it was value sitting there. 10 years earlier, that value had helped him start Bennett Residential Builders. I had borrowed $120,000 against the house. Mark used my garage for tools, my driveway for equipment, and my name when he needed introductions. I had not asked for shares. I wanted the company to belong to him. First time cash flow became tight, I helped. The second time, I told myself every young company went through difficult periods. Each rescue came with a promise that it would be the last. Eleanor had once said, "You keep removing the consequence before he has to learn from it." "He's building something," I had replied. "So are we," she said. "We're building what he expects from us." At the time, I thought she was being severe. Standing in that hospital room, I began to understand what she had seen. Mark sat in the chair beside the window. "You know the company has people depending on it." "I know. Families. I remember every employee you've introduced me to. So you understand why we can't treat the house like it exists in isolation." The word we returned. "The house belongs to me," I said. "I didn't say it didn't, but you believe the company gives you a claim on how it is used." His face hardened. "That's not what I said." It was close enough that neither of us needed to argue over the wording. I looked at the cane resting against my bed. "If I don't go home immediately, where do you think I should go?" Mark's expression changed. Not surprise. Preparation. "There are safer arrangements." "What arrangements?" "We'll talk when there's something definite." I had asked a direct question. "Agan." My son answered as though my right to know depended on his decision, that the information was ready for me. Nora returned the next morning with a printed list. "This is not a recommendation that you leave your home permanently," she said. "These are temporary options if the house is not ready." The first was a short-stay rehabilitation residence farther north. The second offered furnished units with optional nursing visits. The third was Riverbend Commons, a short-term apartment less than 15 minutes from my Maple Ridge home. I read the description. Accessible bathroom, elevator, outpatient transportation. "How temporary is temporary? Weekly or monthly," Nora replied. "Some patients use it while family prepares the house. That would be acceptable as a backup." Mark stood near the foot of the bed. "We won't need it." Nora looked at him. "Is the house ready?" "I've found something safer." I folded the list. "What have you found?" "A place with more support." "What place?" "We're still working through details." "Then it isn't an arrangement, it's an idea." Mark gave Nora a brief smile. "Dad likes precise language. I spent 30 years reading school policies written by committees. Precision became a survival skill." Nora did not smile. "Mr. Bennett needs to be included before any placement is finalized." "Of course," Mark said. He answered too quickly. I tapped the Riverbend page. "Keep this in my file." "I will," Nora said. After she left, I asked Mark for my house keys. "What for?" "I'd like a neighbor to check the downstairs bedroom." Mark frowned. "I'm already taking care of it." "I know. I would still like someone else to look." "The room is full of boxes. The bathroom needs a grab bar. The back entrance isn't safe. A neighbor walking through won't change that." "Then give me the keys, and I'll decide who enters." "You're in a rehabilitation hospital. That has no effect on who owns my front door." His expression sharpened, then softened almost immediately. "Dad, I'm trying to help. I've had contractors look at what needs to be done." "Which contractors?" "People I work with." "What did they recommend?" "I'll bring you the list." He did not return the keys. That afternoon, my phone rang on the windowsill. Mark had finally left it with me after our meeting with Nora. The number was unfamiliar. I answered. "Mr. Bennett?" "Yes." There was a pause, then the sound of papers moving. "I'm sorry. I may have the wrong." The call ended. I checked the number and considered calling back. Mark entered before I did. "Who was that?" "I was about to ask you." He took one look at the screen. "Probably someone asking about work." "Why would someone asking about your work call me?" "My name is attached to yours in half the local directories in Grand Rapids." He held out his hand for the phone. I did not give it to him. It was a small decision. So small that neither of us acknowledged it. But Mark noticed. "I've already found something safer," he repeated. "Then tell me its name." He looked at me for a long moment. "You don't need to worry about the address yet." For the first time, I wondered whether he was hiding the address, because he feared the answer I would give once I knew it. I waited until Nora was present before asking again. That was deliberate. It was also an admission that I no longer trusted a private conversation with my son to produce a clear answer. Mark arrived carrying coffee for himself and a folder he did not open. Nora was reviewing the goals for my final week of therapy. I placed the Riverbend list on the table. Before we continue, I want to know where Mark intends to take me when I leave here. Mark set down his cup. We have time. I asked yesterday, and I told you it wasn't finalized. You told me it was safer. It is. What is the name? He looked toward Nora. The important thing is that Dad won't be alone before he's ready. Say it to me, I said. His gaze returned to mine. I am speaking to you. No, you are explaining me to everyone else. That's unfair. Then, answer the question. He pressed both palms against the arms of the chair. Everything is handled. By whom? By me. Who authorized you to choose where I live? His face flushed. I am your son. That was not my question. Nora spoke before he could respond. Mr. Bennett has identified Maple Ridge as his preferred destination. Riverbend is his temporary alternative if the house is not ready. Mark turned toward her. You haven't seen the house. I am documenting his choice. He's underestimating what he needs. That may be discussed. It does not change who must be included in the decision. The folder remained unopened on Mark's lap. I wanted to ask what it contained. Instead, I watched his thumb move repeatedly along the cardboard edge. Nora asked whether I wanted to continue the conversation without Mark present. He stared at me. The old instinct rose immediately. Protect him from embarrassment. Soften the disagreement. Assure everyone that the family could resolve it privately. I almost declined. Then I remembered my keys disappearing into his pocket. Yes, I said. For a few minutes, Mark stood. This is ridiculous. No, I said. It is private. The difference mattered. After he left, Nora closed the door. Has anyone told you that a physician found you unable to make decisions for yourself? No. Has anyone discussed long-term residential care with you? No. Have you authorized your son to arrange it? No. She waited several seconds before speaking again. I don't want to assume bad intent, I said. You don't have to decide his intent today. He believes he is protecting me. That may be true, and his company is under pressure. He's used to solving problems quickly. Nora met my eyes. You are not one of his construction problems. The sentence was simple. I disliked how much I needed to hear it. When Mark returned, Nora explained that any change from the discharge plan required my direct participation. He nodded without looking at me. Everything is handled, he said again. This time, the words no longer sounded reassuring. They sounded like a door closing somewhere I could not see. Nora's final assessment was not conducted behind a desk. She watched me organize my medication. She asked what I would do if I became dizzy in the shower or missed a therapy appointment. Then she asked what I would do if the downstairs entrance remained unsafe. I would use the front entrance until the back step was modified. I would arrange grocery delivery, accept help with bathing, and keep a phone within reach. What if the house is not ready on discharge day? Riverbend Commons, temporarily. What would make you leave Riverbend? When the first floor bedroom and bathroom are safe, home support is scheduled, and my therapist agrees. What would make you stay longer? If my mobility did not improve as expected. Mark sat near the window, silent, until Nora asked about transportation. I'll handle it, he said. Nora turned to me. Is that your preference? I looked at Mark. It can be, provided I know where I'm being taken. His jaw moved. Nora entered the answer. The plan said I could live independently with temporary help. My Maple Ridge home was the first choice. Riverbend was the backup. It did not call for memory care or allow anyone else to choose for me. I read every line before signing. Mark leaned over Nora's shoulder. Could you write that the family may arrange an appropriate placement if home isn't safe? Nora kept the document in front of me. I can write that the family may help Mr. Bennett with the option he selects. That's not the same thing. No, she said. It isn't. For a moment, no one spoke. The balance in the room had changed. Mark still held my keys. He still controlled transportation and knew more about the condition of my house than I did. But on paper, the decision remained mine. I felt an almost embarrassing degree of relief. I mistook that relief for safety. Nora gave me a copy of the plan. Keep this with your personal things. I placed it inside the drawer beside the Riverbend information. Then she looked directly at Mark. If the destination changes, your father must confirm it himself. Not through you. Not through another family member. Mark's expression stayed neutral. I understand, he looked at me. Of course. It was an answer designed for the room, not for me. Nora gathered her tablet and left to speak with the therapy team. Mark remained by the window. You've made this much more complicated than it needed to be. I signed a plan for my own discharge. You think a signature makes the house safe? No. I think a signature records what I chose. And when something goes wrong, we deal with what actually goes wrong. You always do this. Do what? Turn everything into a principle. I folded the discharge plan and returned it to the drawer. Principles are usually what people call boundaries when the boundaries inconvenience them. His phone rang. He checked the screen and walked into the hallway. Through the glass, I watched him listen. The tension in his shoulders eased. He said something I could not hear, then looked back toward my room before turning away. When he returned, he was calmer. "Everything's fine," he said. I had heard that sentence before every financial problem I later helped solve. The record said I was going home. Mark knew the record said I was going home. For the first time, I wondered whether he had stopped asking for my agreement, because he had already decided to act without it. The next morning, I asked Nora for another copy of my discharge plan. She glanced toward the drawer. "I gave you one yesterday. I know. I want one I can keep with me." That was not the whole reason. The first copy was still in my drawer, beside the Riverbend information. Mark knew where both documents were. Until that week, I would have felt foolish for imagining that mattered. Now I wanted a copy he could not move, misplace, or reinterpret. Nora printed one. I folded it into quarters and placed it in the inside pocket of my cardigan. "There's something else I need to ask." She waited. "Has anyone at Mercy Ridge found me unable to make decisions for myself?" "No." "Has any doctor written that?" "No." "Has Mark asked anyone to?" Her expression changed slightly. "He has raised concerns about whether you understand the risks of living alone." That wasn't my question. No formal finding has been requested or made. The answer should have reassured me. Instead, it sharpened the problem. Mark continued speaking, as though my ability to choose were already in doubt, even though no one treating me had said so. Could he arrange long-term care without one? Nora chose her words carefully. A facility should ask what you want. It should also verify that anyone speaking for you truly has that right. It was simpler than a legal explanation. I was still the person who had to be asked. "Is Riverbend still available?" "I can check. I'm not choosing it yet." "I understand. I simply want to know whether it remains a real option." Nora made the call from the room. A furnished unit would likely be available the following week, though nothing could be guaranteed until a reservation was made. She wrote the contact information on the back of the page. "Keep this with you too." I slipped it into the same pocket. When Mark arrived that afternoon, I asked for my keys. He was carrying a paper bag from a sandwich shop. He placed it on the windowsill as if my question had been about lunch. "The work isn't finished." "What work?" "The downstairs room. You said contractors had inspected it." "They did. What did they recommend?" "I don't have the list with me. You were going to bring it." "I've had other things going on." I held out my hand. "Then give me the keys." He looked at my palm but did not reach into his pocket. "What are you going to do with them from here?" "That is not the standard by which ownership works." "Dad, Mark." He rubbed the back of his neck. "The grab bar isn't in. The boxes haven't been moved. I don't want you calling neighbors and confusing everybody." "Confusing them about my own house?" "I'm trying to finish what you asked me to do. I asked you to prepare a downstairs room. I did not ask you to decide who may enter my home." His eyes moved toward the door. "You're turning this into something it isn't." "What is it?" "A set of keys." "Then returning them should be easy." He did not. That told me more than another argument would have. Instead, he took my phone from the windowsill and handed it over. "There. You wanted this back. I accepted it." The keys remained in his pocket. As he unpacked the sandwiches, I checked my recent calls. The unknown number from the previous day was still there. I pressed it. Mark looked up immediately. The call rang twice before a woman answered. "Morales Property Management." I said nothing for a moment. "Hello?" "I may have the wrong number," I said. Mark crossed the room and ended the call with his thumb. "What are you doing?" "I called a number that called me. It's spam." She answered with the name of a property management company. His face changed, but only for a second. "One of my projects uses outside property managers." "Why did she call my phone?" "I've already explained that people have old contact information." "No, you offered a possibility." He placed my phone on the bed. "You're recovering from a stroke, Dad. You're starting to see threats in ordinary things." The sentence was quiet, That made it worse. I thought of all the times I had protected his dignity by accepting an incomplete answer. Why wouldn't I need my own keys when I leave here? He picked up his sandwich and turned toward the window. You won't need them right away. The answer came too quickly to be accidental. For the first time, I stopped asking whether Mark was hiding something. I began asking how much he had already done. Denise visited the following evening. She brought clean clothes, a small bag of toiletries, and a sweater Lily had chosen for me. It was dark green, softer than anything I would have bought for myself. She said it makes you look less like a principal, Denise said. I retired 6 years ago. Apparently the transformation remains incomplete. Denise smiled, but she looked tired. Faint shadows sat beneath her eyes. She checked her phone twice before sitting down. How is the company? I asked. Busy. That wasn't the question. She glanced toward the door. Mark has a lot going on. He usually does. He's trying to keep everybody working. I waited. Denise managed the administrative side of Mark's company. She normally spoke in dates, amounts, and deadlines. That evening, she offered only generalities. I'm not asking you to discuss private business, I said. I'm asking whether something is wrong. We have a project taking longer than expected. How much longer? We're working through it. The phrase sounded familiar. I had heard different versions of it just before Mark asked for help. Denise unpacked the toiletries. At least your living arrangement is settled. That's one thing off his plate. I looked at her. What living arrangement? She stopped with a bottle of shampoo in her hand. The safer option. What is its name? Her eyes narrowed. Mark said you'd already settled on it. I have settled on Maple Ridge, with River Bend as a temporary alternative. The bottle remained suspended between us. He said you understood that home might not be realistic. I understand that home may require changes. That is not the same as agreeing to an unnamed destination. Denise set the bottle down. I may have misunderstood. Or Mark may have allowed you to. She looked toward the door. I did not want her alarm to warn Mark that I had begun comparing his stories. Did he tell you where this place is? He said he would explain it with you. That sounds very much like no. Her mouth tightened. Walter, he's scared. You could have fallen at home and no one would have known. That is a reason to discuss support. It is not a reason to hold a meeting about my life without me. I'm not saying it is, but she was not saying it wasn't. Before she left, I asked about Lily. She has a chemistry test. I've called twice. Mark thought you should have a quiet week before the transition. What transition? Denise picked up her purse. You need to talk to him. I have tried. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, I thought you knew. After she left, I sat with the green sweater across my knees. Mark arrived an hour later. I did not mention Denise's exact words. I asked only about the discharge schedule. I'll be here at 9, he said. They want you out before lunch. Where are we going? First, we'll get you settled. At Maple Ridge? The house isn't ready. Then Riverbend. I have something better. Name it. He looked down at his phone. Can we not do this again? We will do it until you answer. You're making every step harder. I am asking for an address. You'll see it tomorrow. He still would not give me the address. He expected me to learn it only after resisting became useless. I would like Lily there when I leave. That isn't a good idea. Why? You need to settle in first. She is 15, not 5. She's under enough stress, because of my stroke, because of everything. What is everything? He picked up my overnight bag and checked the zipper. I'll bring the rest of your clothes in the morning. The rest? You may need more than one change. For Riverbend? He did not answer. I stood from the chair beside my bed, slower than I wanted, and steadied myself with the cane. Mark moved instinctively to help. I held up my free hand. No. He stopped. It was a small refusal, but it changed his expression. You're not ready to manage on your own. I have never claimed I need no help. Then stop fighting the person trying to give it. Help begins with an answer. He lifted the overnight bag. Everything is handled. The words once meant I could rest. Now they meant he had done something he did not intend to explain until it was too late to stop him. I called Lily after dinner. The phone rang until her voicemail answered. Hello, sweetheart. It's Grandpa again. I paused. There were several things I wanted to say, none of which belonged in a message she might hear while sitting beside her father. I'm leaving Mercy Ridge tomorrow. I'd like to see you when you're free. You don't have to bring anything. Just yourself. I ended the call, 5 minutes later, a text from Lily appeared. It read, "I hope tomorrow goes okay. Dad said you need time to settle. Love you." I read it twice. It sounded like Lily. It also sounded like a sentence built from information someone else had given her. I typed back, "I would rather hear from you directly. You are never a burden to me." The message showed as delivered. No answer came. Mark entered carrying a larger suitcase than the bag he had taken the previous evening. It was the blue case I had used for a 2-week trip years earlier. "Why did you pack that? You need clothes." "For how long? It's better to have too much than too little." "Did you pack it?" Denise helped. I set my phone on the table. "Did she know where you planned to take me?" His eyes moved briefly toward the screen. "She knows we found a safe place." "Does Lily?" "Lily knows you need support." That was not my question. He lifted the suitcase onto the bench beneath the window. The wheels struck the wood with a hard knock. "You need to stop interrogating everyone. I have asked you for one address, and tomorrow you'll see it." I looked at the suitcase. Mark had packed toiletries, shoes, and enough clothing for more than a temporary stop on the way home. "You told me the downstairs room was being prepared. It isn't safe yet. You told me contractors had inspected it. They did. You told Denise I had agreed to another arrangement. She misunderstood. You told Lily I needed time to settle. She is a child. She is old enough to notice when adults avoid a clear sentence." Mark turned away. I heard Eleanor's voice in memory, not as a ghost or message, but as something she had said often enough to remain available when I needed it. "Do not call silence peace, Walter. Sometimes silence is only fear with good manners." For 6 years I had used her absence as an excuse. She had been the one who said difficult things to Mark. I had been the one who paid bills, made calls, and repaired what followed. When she died, I continued my half of the arrangement and allowed hers to disappear. I looked at my son. "Tell me now." "Tell you what?" "Where you are taking me." He closed the suitcase. "We are not doing this tonight. That is not your decision. You're tired. I know whether I am tired. You're upset. I know whether I am upset." His voice rose. "You had a stroke 3 weeks ago, and I am still standing here asking you the same question." He stared at me. For one moment I thought he might answer. Instead, he pulled the suitcase toward the door. "I'll be here at 9, Mark." He stopped but did not turn. "If you take me anywhere I have not agreed to go, that will not be care." His shoulders stiffened. "You'll understand when we get there." The door closed behind him. I remained standing until the sound of the suitcase wheels disappeared down the hallway. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the drawer. The original discharge plan was there. So was the Riverbend sheet. I moved both into my cardigan pocket beside the copies Nora had given me. I also wrote the Riverbend number on a separate piece of paper and placed it inside my wallet. It was not much of a plan. I still had no car, no house keys, and no idea what Mark had arranged. But I had stopped waiting for him to become honest on his own. Nora met us near the entrance the following morning. I wore the green sweater Lily had chosen, dark trousers, and the shoes I had practiced in during therapy. My cane felt lighter than it had a week earlier. Mark stood beside the blue suitcase with his coat already on. Nora reviewed the final instructions. Medication list, in my pocket. Therapy schedule, in the folder. Transportation, Mark answered. "I'm taking him." Nora looked at me. "That's correct," I said, "provided I know where we're going." Mark gave a small laugh. "We've discussed this." "No, you've delayed it." Nora's attention shifted to him. "Mr. Bennett's plan says he can live independently with support. Any change needs his direct approval." "I understand," Mark said. He said it with the calm of someone promising to follow a rule he had already decided did not apply. I signed the discharge acknowledgement myself. Nora handed me the folder rather than Mark. "Call if the plan changes." "I will." Mark took the suitcase. I kept the folder. Outside, the sky was colorless, and the wind cut through the parking lot. Mark opened the passenger door and waited while I lowered myself into the seat. He placed the cane beside me and loaded the suitcase into the trunk. For the first several minutes, neither of us spoke. We passed the pharmacy and the elementary school where Eleanor had once worked. Then Mark stayed in the right lane. The road to Maple Ridge required the left. "You missed the turn." "I know. Turn around. We need to stop somewhere first." "Where?" "You'll see." I reached for the door handle, not because I intended to open it while the car was moving, but because my body wanted something solid to hold. "Mark, pull over." We're almost there. Pull over. You're making this harder than it needs to be. He had used that sentence before, when I questioned his expenses, when Eleanor challenged him, when a supplier called about an unpaid bill. It always meant the same thing. He wanted the consequence to arrive after the decision could no longer be reversed. I took out my phone. "What are you doing?" Calling Nora. He reached toward it, then stopped himself. "You're going to create a scene over a safe place you haven't even seen. You have spent a week refusing to name it, because you decided before hearing anything. I decided I have a right to know where I am being taken." The car turned into a landscaped entrance. A stone sign stood beyond a row of bare trees. The sign read, "Pine Harbor Memory Care." For a moment I heard only the tires over the pavement at care. Not an accessible apartment, not a short-term rehabilitation unit, a secured residential facility for people who could no longer live safely because of cognitive decline. Mark slowed near the covered entrance. "I am not going inside. You need to see it. I do not need memory care. You need 24-hour support until we know what the stroke changed. We already know what it changed. You know what the therapists saw in controlled sessions. And you know what? I know you're not safe alone. That is an opinion. It is not permission." Two employees came through the glass doors. One pushed a wheelchair. The other carried a clipboard. The woman with the clipboard approached Mark's side. "Mr. Bennett?" "Yes. We have the intake room ready." She glanced at me but continued speaking to him. Mark opened his door. I did not move. "Tell them I did not agree to this." He leaned closer. "Please don't make this humiliating." There it was. Even then, he expected me to protect him from embarrassment. One employee opened my door and offered the wheelchair. "I can walk." Mark retrieved my cane and handed it to me. My left leg trembled when I stood. The cold had tightened the muscles, and the car ride had not helped. Mark reached for my elbow. I stepped away. The employee took the suitcase from the trunk. I watched it roll through the doors ahead of me. For years, I had believed keeping family matters private was an act of loyalty. I paid debts quietly. I corrected stories gently. I waited until Mark was alone before telling him he was wrong. He had mistaken every private correction for permission to continue. I followed the suitcase into Pine Harbor. Before the doors closed behind me, I made one decision. Whatever Mark said in that lobby, I would not protect him from the truth. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. A gas fireplace burned behind glass along one wall. Framed photographs of smiling residents hung near the reception desk. Artificial hydrangeas filled a vase on a low table. Nothing about Pine Harbor looked cruel. That made what Mark had done no less wrong. The woman with the clipboard introduced herself as Evelyn Shaw, the admissions manager. "Mr. Bennett, we've prepared a private room for your initial stay. I will not be staying." She hesitated. Mark stepped closer to the desk. "He's had a difficult morning. I had a dishonest morning." "Dad." I turned toward him. "Tell her I never agreed to this." He lowered his voice. "Can we talk privately? We have spoken privately for 3 weeks." Denise came through the entrance, breathing quickly as if she had hurried from the parking lot. "I'm sorry. Traffic was." She stopped when she saw me standing beside the suitcase. "What's happening?" "I'm being admitted to a memory care facility," I said. Apparently by agreement. Her eyes went to Mark. "You said he knew. He knows he needs somewhere safe." Denise turned to him. "That is not what he said." Evelyn looked down at the intake file. "Our notes say your family arranged long-term care after your stroke. My physical changes require a cane," I said. "No one treating me has found a problem with my thinking." Mark exhaled sharply. "This is exactly why I didn't want to do this in the lobby." "Then you should not have brought me to the lobby." Denise took a step toward him. "Did he agree or not?" Mark looked at me rather than answering her. "Dad, this is temporary until you adjust. The intake manager just called it long-term. That's administrative language. I spent 30 years listening to people use administrative language to hide decisions they did not want examined." Evelyn closed the file. "Perhaps we should pause." "No," Mark said. "We have gone over this for weeks. He cannot live in that house alone. The lower level isn't ready, and he refuses to be realistic." I identified Riverbend as a temporary option. You are not going to an apartment with a call button and pretending that makes you independent. "I have not pretended anything." Mark's face reddened. "You think because you can answer questions and walk down a practice hallway, nothing has changed." A great deal has changed. None of it gave you ownership of my decisions. He glanced around the lobby. An employee near the fireplace had stopped arranging magazines. The receptionist no longer typed. Mark hated an audience. I knew that, and for most of his life I had protected him from one. Mark, I said quietly, tell her I never agreed to this. If you don't, I will. For a moment I saw the choice reach him. He could tell the truth. He could say he had become frightened, desperate, or overconfident. He could ask Pine Harbor to cancel the intake and take me to Riverbend. He could lose his plan without losing the last piece of my trust. Instead, he straightened. Dad, you don't understand the situation. Then explain it. You can't go home. That remains to be determined. No, it doesn't. His voice carried across the lobby. Your house has already been rented. This is where you live now. The words landed with such precision that everything around them seemed to become still. Denise stared at him. Rented? Mark did not look at her. I rested both hands over the handle of my cane. By whom? I handled it. You handled my house? You weren't going back there. I was discharged less than an hour ago. I made the decision before today because somebody had to. Evelyn reopened the file. Mark, what authority did you use to arrange the lease? He touched the documents beneath her hand. I'm his designated representative. I looked at Evelyn. Before you admit me, please tell me which document allows him to act against my wishes. Mark gave her a patient smile. Dad's confused. The stroke changed things. Evelyn's pen stopped above the page. I stopped allowing Mark to decide what came next. I am not confused, I said. Mark turned toward me. You are upset. I'm both upset and capable of understanding why. Evelyn drew the intake file closer. Let's slow this down. We've already delayed long enough, Mark said. He needs to be settled. Evelyn did not look at him. Mr. Walter Bennett, are you objecting to admission? Yes. Do you understand where you are? Pine Harbor Memory Care. Do you understand why your son says he brought you here? He believes I cannot live safely without constant supervision. He has also just told me he rented my home without asking. Mark shook his head. He's framing it that way because he's angry. I am describing what happened. Evelyn turned to Mark. You provided a healthcare form naming you as his advocate and the financial power of attorney. I see copies of both. My name is on them. Your name being on them is not the question. I watched his confidence shift. It did not disappear. Mark was too accustomed to solving problems by pushing harder when someone resisted. I am his son and designated representative, he said. The hospital knows that. The hospital knows your name appears in the documents, I said. That is different. He looked at me sharply. I turned back to Evelyn. Please read the conditions on the page he skipped. She separated the documents. One covered health decisions. The other covered money and property. They had been prepared together after Eleanor died, but they were not the same authority. Evelyn read silently. Mark placed one hand on the counter. This is a safety issue. He can recite paperwork all day, but that doesn't mean he understands what will happen when he falls. I understand that I may fall. That is why I agreed to temporary support. You are minimizing everything, and you are avoiding the document. Evelyn looked up. Do you have the 2 written findings required by this document? Mark paused. What findings? The findings that your father can no longer make or participate in his own decisions. He had a stroke. That is not what I asked. He's 70 years old and just spent 3 weeks in rehab. I am 69. Mark ignored me. You can see he needs assistance. Needing help does not answer the authority question, Evelyn said. Denise moved closer to the counter. Mark, do you have what she's asking for? We don't need to turn this into a technicality. Her voice changed. You told me, he agreed. Mark finally looked at her. I told you this was the safest plan. You told me he knew. He did know. I knew you were hiding an address, I said. I did not know you intended to leave me here. Evelyn closed the healthcare document. I'm going to open the discharge records sent by Mercy Ridge. Mark's hand tightened against the counter. They don't know what his home situation is. They completed his functional and capacity assessments. They saw him in a controlled environment. Then their records will show what has and has not been established. Evelyn moved to a computer behind the desk. Mark stepped after her. This delay is agitating him. No, I said. It is agitating you. He turned. For the first time that morning, he looked less like a man in control and more like the boy who used to wait for me to change a consequence after he ran out of explanations. Evelyn entered several details, then picked up the phone. "I'm calling the discharge coordinator listed here. Nora Ellis," I said. She nodded and dialed. While the call connected, Denise faced Mark. "Did he ever say yes?" Mark lowered his voice. "He was never going to say yes because he refuses to admit what he needs. That isn't an answer. I made a decision before something worse happened." "You made a decision before asking him," I asked. "You gave me 3 weeks of unnamed arrangements," I said. "That was not asking." A voice answered through the phone. Evelyn identified herself. She explained that I was present at Pine Harbor and objecting to admission while my son claimed the right to proceed. She listened. Then she switched to speakerphone. Nora's voice came clearly through the receiver. Mr. Bennett understood his options and helped create his discharge plan. He chose independent living with support. Mark leaned toward the phone. "You never saw the house." "No," Nora said. "That is why the plan included temporary alternatives if the home was not ready. He cannot be alone. He did not propose being alone without support." Evelyn opened another document on the screen. The plan names Maple Ridge as his first choice and Riverbend as the short-term alternative. Denise closed her eyes for a second. Mark said, "That plan was unrealistic." "Perhaps," Evelyn replied. "But I have no document allowing us to ignore his choice." She returned to the printed packet. "Mark, I need to ask again. Do you have the 2 written findings required before this authority takes effect?" He said nothing. His silence did not prove why he had done it. It proved something more immediate. He had brought me there without the proof that would allow anyone to ignore my no. Evelyn ended the call with Nora and placed the phone back in its cradle. She did not raise her voice. She did not accuse Mark of a crime or threaten the police. She simply moved the intake file away from him. "No one has found Mr. Bennett unable to make his own decisions," she said. "We cannot admit him against his wishes." Mark stared at her. "So you're sending him home because he can answer questions?" "No," Evelyn said. "I am not choosing where he goes." She turned to me. "Mr. Bennett, where would you like us to take you?" The question should not have felt extraordinary. It was the question that should have been asked at the beginning. For a moment, my Maple Ridge home rose in my mind exactly as I had left it. Eleanor's, books, the old porch, the downstairs room, the coffee stain drying beneath the desk. I wanted to say home. Part of me wanted Mark to hear it. I wanted to walk through my own front door that afternoon and prove every word he had said about me wrong. Choosing out of pride would still allow him to control my decision. I knew the grab bar had not been installed. I had no confirmed home care schedule. I did not know what had been moved from the house, or who had entered it. "Riverbend Commons," I said, "and Mark is not taking me there." His head came up. "Dad, no, we need to talk. We have talked. What we have not done is verify." Denise looked at me. "I can drive you." I considered it. She had participated in the plan, even if she had not known its full shape. I was not ready to rely on her either. I would prefer transportation arranged through Mercy Ridge or Riverbend. Evelyn nodded. "I can help coordinate that." Mark stepped away from the desk. "You're punishing everyone because I tried to keep you safe. I am removing your control because you used it without my consent. You don't know what you're doing to the company." There it was. Not the full truth, the first crack in the wall around it. "What does my home have to do with your company?" He looked toward Denise. She looked back at him with the same question. "Nothing," he said. It was the wrong answer. We all knew it. Evelyn arranged a wheelchair-accessible transport vehicle, though I chose to walk to it with my cane. Mark stood near the entrance while the driver secured my suitcase. "Give me the keys," I said. "Not here, now. The house is occupied." Denise turned. "What do you mean, occupied?" "It isn't yet." "Then return the keys." He did not. I could have created another scene. I had won the immediate decision, and my body was beginning to remind me that adrenaline was not strength. "Keep them for the next 2 hours," I said. "After that, the locks will no longer match." He stared at me. I had never spoken to him that way before. The transport vehicle took me to Riverbend, the short-term apartment Nora had described. The unit was small but clean. It had an accessible shower, a narrow kitchen, and a window overlooking prairies. It was not home. It was also mine to choose. After the staff member left, I sat at the small table and called the number that had appeared on my phone several days earlier. Morales Property Management. This is Walter Bennett. There was a pause. Mr. Bennett, you called me while I was at Mercy Ridge. I did. Your son said you weren't available to discuss the property. What property? Another pause. Your house on Maple Ridge. I opened the discharge folder and placed my hand flat on the table. Tell me exactly what he asked you to do. The woman introduced herself as Rachel Morales. She explained that Mark had approached her about a 6-month prepaid rental. He had shown her a copy of the financial power of attorney and signed the draft lease as my authorized agent. I was told you were moving into long-term care, she said. I was taken to a memory care facility this morning. I was not admitted. Rachel went quiet. Did you authorize the rental? No. Is the power of attorney active? No. She asked me to send documentation. The transaction has to stop, she said. I'll contact the tenants immediately. Where is their money? It was transferred to the account Mark designated. It was not held in our escrow account. How much? I need to confirm the breakdown. Confirm it. I heard papers moving. The rent was $3,100 a month. They prepaid 6 months and added 1 month as a deposit. I calculated before she finished. $21,700. Yes. And Mark has it. The transfer went to the account he provided. I looked out at the unfamiliar trees beyond the glass. At Pine Harbor, I had learned Mark had tried to control where I lived. At Riverbend, I learned why he needed me out of the house. Rachel sent the records the following morning. There were emails, a draft lease, a copy of the financial power of attorney, and a statement Mark had signed calling himself my authorized agent. I placed each page on the table as I read it. The earliest message was dated 11 days after my stroke. In it, Mark told Rachel I would be entering long-term care and would not return to Maple Ridge. At that point, I had been practicing stares and telling everyone who asked that I intended to go home. The emails explained several things I had noticed, without understanding. The call Mark took outside my room, the missing mail, his insistence on keeping the keys, the sudden calm that came over him after the discharge plan had been signed. A later email confirmed the transfer of $21,700 into an account belonging to Mark's company. Rachel called while I was reading. I should have verified the triggering conditions, she said. Yes. I relied on the notarized document and his written confirmation. Yes. I have notified the tenants that the transaction cannot proceed. They're moving for work and expected possession next week. They will receive every dollar back. I need that in writing from Mark. You will have it. You may want legal representation. I may. For now, I want the transaction stopped, family protected, and every communication preserved. Rachel agreed. I did not need a courtroom to understand what the records showed. Mark had used a document designed to protect me during incapacity, while I remained fully capable of objecting. That afternoon, I arranged for a locksmith. Mark left 3 voicemails. I listened to the first. You're overreacting. I was going to explain everything once you were settled. The second was longer. The money went to payroll and suppliers. It wasn't for me. If you freeze everything now, people are going to lose their jobs. The third was quieter. Please call me. I did not call immediately. Instead, I called Lily. She answered on the second ring. Grandpa? I'm at Riverbend. There was a silence. Dad said you chose a memory care place. No. He said you wanted somewhere permanent because the house was too much. No one asked me to make that choice. Her breathing changed. Then why didn't you tell me? I tried to call. He said you needed space. I never asked for space from you. She was quiet for several seconds. Was Dad lying? He told you something that was not true. Why? That is a question he will have to answer. You're not going to tell me he's a terrible person? He is your father. You are allowed to love him. And you? I love him too. It was the hardest true sentence I had spoken all week. Loving someone does not require you to pretend they told the truth. Lily began to cry quietly. I did not tell her everything about the house or the money. She was 15. She deserved honesty, not recruitment into an adult war. You may call me directly whenever you want, I said. You do not need permission from either of us. Can I visit? Yes. Will Dad be there? Not unless I invite him. The boundary sounded severe when spoken aloud. It was also necessary. 2 days later, Denise came to Riverbend alone. She carried a folder from the company. I need you to see this before you meet Mark. Inside were cash flow reports, invoices, and records from the townhouse project. Company needed about $44,000 in cash, and it needed it quickly. The rental money had covered part of payroll, supplier bills, and insurance. What caused the shortage? I asked. Denise looked down. Mark approved expensive changes before the client signed for them. Material costs rose, and now the client is holding the final payment. Did you know? I knew the project was over budget. I did not know how much he had promised without documentation. You manage the records. He stopped bringing me everything. She looked away after saying it. I knew he wanted to rent your house, she continued. I knew he thought the company could use the money temporarily. I told myself you would understand because you had helped before. I was never asked. I know that now. You also did not ask me. She nodded. No, I did not excuse her. I also did not make her responsible for the parts Mark had hidden from both of us. Will the company survive without more money from me? Smaller. Mark will have to sell equipment, cancel 2 expansion projects, and negotiate with suppliers, but it can survive. And the tenants? He has to refund them before anything else. Denise closed the folder. He thinks you'll change your mind when he explains what happens to the employees. I know their names. That does not make me responsible for every decision he made. He's frightened. So am I. She looked surprised. People often mistook a quiet voice for the absence of fear. I am frightened that my son believed my weakness gave him permission, I said. And I am frightened that I helped teach him every consequence could be transferred to me. Denise said nothing. Tell Mark I will meet him at the office tomorrow. You will be present. The records will be present. There will be no private version afterward. The next morning, Mark was seated at the conference table when I arrived. He looked older than he had at Pine Harbor. The company office smelled of coffee, printer toner, and sawdust carried in from the equipment yard. On the wall behind him hung a photograph, taken after the company completed its first project. I stood beside him in that photograph. I remembered how proud I had been. Mark pushed a chair out for me. I moved it myself. Denise placed the financial records on the table. Mark looked from her to me. You brought company records into a family dispute. You brought my house into a company crisis. He flinched. The money kept people paid. The money belonged to a family who believed they were renting my home. I was going to replace it. With what? The final project payment. The payment being withheld because of decisions you failed to document. His eyes moved to Denise. She did not look away. You went through everything. I did my job, she said. You chose now to do it? I chose now to stop pretending the numbers would fix themselves. Mark leaned back. You both act like I stole the money and bought a boat. No, I said. You used it for payroll and suppliers. Exactly. That explains where it went. It does not explain why you believed you had the right to take it. He stood and walked toward the window. You gave me $120,000 to build this company. I borrowed against my home so you could begin. You told me you believed in it. I did. Then how can you stand there and let it collapse? There was the question beneath everything, not whether I loved him, whether love meant rescue. 18 people work here, he said. Their families depend on these checks. If I lose supplier credit, it doesn't just hurt me. You are right. He turned, surprised. The consequences extend beyond you. Then help me. I will help correct what was done in my name. I will not put another dollar into your company. His face went still. You'd rather watch it fail. I would rather watch you take responsibility for whether it survives. I made one bad decision. You made several. You hid the project problem. You used my authority before it existed. You rented my house. You took money. You brought me to memory care and told people I could not speak for myself. I was trying to hold everything together. So was I. The words stopped him. For 10 years I paid, called, introduced, guaranteed, and stayed quiet. I told myself I was keeping the family together. I rested both hands on the table. What I was doing was teaching you that the damage would always stop at my door. He sat down slowly. I didn't think you'd understand how close we were. You never gave me the chance. I knew you'd say no. That is why consent matters. Denise placed a repayment plan on the table. Mark would sell 2 machines the company could spare. He would cancel the expansion lease. Incoming payments would be used to return the $21,700 within 10 days. The tenants would be refunded first. Mark looked at the plan. You've already decided. No, I said. You already decided. This is the cost. He signed. Not dramatically, not with an apology capable of repairing everything. He signed because there was no other honest path left. Before I left, he said, "I am sorry, I stopped at the door." "For what?" He looked down at the table. "For taking you there, that is one part. For the house, another." He struggled with the next words. "For making it easier to call you confused than to admit I was desperate." It was the first apology that sounded as though he understood the injury. It was not enough to restore trust. It was enough for me not to close the door forever. 4 weeks after Pine Harbor, I returned to Maple Ridge. The locksmith had changed the locks. A contractor I selected installed grab bars, improved the downstairs entrance, and converted Eleanor's library into a temporary bedroom without removing her shelves. I arranged home support 3 mornings a week. Physical therapy continued. I still used the cane outdoors and on days when fatigue made my left leg unreliable. Accepting help no longer felt like surrender. Lily visited the first Saturday. She stood on the back porch with one foot beside the small handprint she had left in the concrete 9 years earlier. "I can't believe my hand was that small." "You were very loud for someone that size." She smiled. Mark did not come with. He had refunded the tenants. The company had lost 2 expansion opportunities and several pieces of equipment, but it remained open at a smaller scale. Denai sent me the final repayment confirmation. Rachel confirmed that the family had received every dollar. Mark called once a week. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I did not. I had not given him a new key. I had replaced him in my healthcare and financial documents. He no longer managed my mail, my calls, my appointments, or my relationship with Lily. One evening, he asked whether he could visit. "Not this week," I said. He was silent. "All right." It was a small answer, but it was the first time I heard him accept a boundary without trying to negotiate it. After the call, I walked to the front door and checked the lock before bed. The key turned easily. Trust, I knew, would take longer.